Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into something absolutely fascinating: how we use everyday tools to extend our minds, and specifically, what happens when those tools become artificially intelligent. So, is AI actually making you smarter, or is it just kind of doing the thinking for you? It's a huge question, right? That blur between getting a helpful boost and quietly handing over the keys to your own cognition. In this explainer, we're going to completely clear up that blur by looking at how our minds actually work with external tools. All right, let's jump right into section 1, why we offload thinking. Before we even talk about AI, we have to get one thing straight. Handing off mental work. It's a completely normal human behavior. It's not you being lazy. Researchers call this cognitive offloading. Basically, it's moving mental work to an external tool because it feels cheaper, faster, or just safer. The human mind is brilliant, but our attention span is actually super limited. We literally just aren't built to hold a massive amount of moving parts in our head all at once. When a task is heavy or repetitive, our brains naturally look for a shortcut to save energy. I mean, we do this all the time, right? Calculators, calendars, GPS, tossing a quick note in your phone. Think about it. When you use a calculator to crunch some complex math, that's actually a healthy power move. You're clearing out mental space so you can focus on higher-level decisions, like what that math actually means for your budget or your project. You aren't avoiding thinking. You're just getting the basic processing out of the way so you can do better, deeper thinking. Which brings us to section 2, the core cognitive trade-off.
So offloading isn't automatically a bad thing, but it is a really delicate balancing act between what you gain right now in the exact moment you use a tool and what cognitive capacity you might lose over time. Think of it like this, and I absolutely love this metaphor. Your brain is not a giant warehouse where you endlessly store infinite boxes of facts. It's way more like a small workbench. At any given moment, only a few things can sit on that bench. If you have too many parts scattered all over it, you literally have no room to build anything. Offloading puts the messy, distracting parts on a shelf, so you actually have the space and clarity to build something meaningful.
But here is the catch. We call it the river of least resistance. Think about water. Water doesn't look for the noblest, most character-building path down a mountain. It goes downhill through the absolute easiest channel it can find. Well, our brains optimize the exact same way. Friction shapes our behavior. If a tool makes things effortless, our minds naturally prefer it. Over time, we can easily fall into over-offloading, handing off tasks we probably should be doing ourselves just because it's the easiest cognitive route. And that brings us to something absolutely crucial: productive strain. Okay, imagine you want to learn to play the piano. If you sit there and someone else presses the keys for you, yeah, you get to enjoy the beautiful music. But are you building the skill? No way. The awkward finger movements, the timing, the mistakes, the sheer frustration of getting the chords right, that mental effort is the productive strain that literally builds the machinery of your mind. If you lose the strain, you lose the skill. You get the song, but you lose the ability to be a musician. So what this really boils down to is healthy versus risky offloading. Healthy offloading frees up your attention, remembers details you don't need to memorize, and ultimately supports your own judgment. Risky offloading, that removes the effort entirely. It replaces your judgment and just becomes your default setting. The real danger here isn't just that you're putting in less effort in the moment. The danger is that you are no longer building your own internal mental maps for the future.
Moving on to section 3, how AI changes thinking.
Now, a calculator just crunches numbers, but AI represents a massive paradigm shift. It is fundamentally different because it actually offloads what we call the messy middle of your thinking process. Shaping vague ideas, comparing your options, noticing contradictions, trying to ask better questions. Normally, this is where you do the hard, necessary work of cognitive search. It's literally where true understanding is born. But AI anticipates our thoughts. It jumps right into that messy middle and generates the thought before you even finish having it. This creates 3 really distinct levels of behavioral risk. Let's break this down. First, there's support mode. The AI clears small burdens, you do the reasoning, risk is low. You're still in charge. Then there's scaffold mode. AI gives you a structure, you fill in the gaps. That's a moderate risk. But the real danger zone? That's substitute mode. That's where the AI produces the entire thought for you, and all you do is hit approve. The risk of mental atrophy here is incredibly high because the AI has slipped from being a helpful drafting partner to basically acting as a proxy mind, doing the heavy lifting while you just nod along. Let's look at how this plays out in the real world with what we call the illusion of learning. Imagine a biology student staring down a super dense, difficult textbook chapter. They ask an AI for a summary, paste it directly into their notes, and boom, massive wave of relief. The output looks so polished and complete, so they stop. They feel like they did the work. Clean artifacts give us this immense emotional satisfaction, but because the student totally bypassed that messy middle of struggling with the text, they are left with incredibly thin internal maps. They own the notes, for sure, but they definitely don't own the knowledge.
All right, Section 4, Flashlight versus Driver. This brings us to a really great framework for evaluating your relationship with these tools. I want you to pause and honestly ask yourself, who is really steering your thoughts? When you sit down with an AI tool, are you actively engaging with the material, or are you just blindly coasting along for the ride, letting the algorithm decide your destination? Think of AI as either a flashlight or a driver. When AI is a flashlight, you are the one steering. You know where you want to go, and you're just using the AI to shine a light into dark corners, test claims, and brainstorm ideas you might have missed. You're using the tool to see better. But when AI is a driver, the AI is steering. You just accept what it spits out because it arrived quickly and sounds plausible. You stop being a thinker, and you just become a reviewer. And let me tell you, reviewing a pre-written thought is absolutely not the same thing as reasoning your way to a conclusion. Which leads us nicely into Section 5. Choosing your dependence. Look, the goal here isn't to avoid tools completely or to worship them. It's about consciously choosing our dependence. We can totally preserve our capabilities while still getting the benefits. You can use AI to unstick a bad first draft, or play devil's advocate against your ideas, or just reduce formatting clutter. Imagine someone, let's call her Ava, using AI to outline a big presentation. But then, she actively challenges each section. She rewrites the core argument in her own voice, and she rehearses it herself. She's keeping those reasoning muscles active. She is using the tool to extend her mind, rather than letting the tool be her mind. And this leads to just an absolute mic drop quote for how we should evaluate our everyday tools. The best use of AI leaves you more able to think when the AI is gone. Think about that for a second. That is the ultimate goal, right there. We have to prioritize our preserved capability and mental clarity way above mere convenience. When you step away from the keyboard, you should feel more in charge of your cognition, not less. You should have stronger mental models, not weaker ones. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one lingering question to mull over. The next time you fire up an AI, just take a brief pause and ask yourself, is this my flashlight or is it my driver? Manage your cognitive environment, protect that mental workbench, and keep building those internal maps. Thanks so much for joining me today. Keep thinking deeply out there,